Thanks for that reading, Zach, and good afternoon, young people. It's lovely to be with you again. I hope you've all enjoyed another stunning day. You know it's a good day when you play tennis with your mates and you lose 2-1 and you still think it's a cracking day. And that was my experience today. Unfortunately, I let my partner down and we went down, but it was wonderful, a beautiful day. Now, Exodus 33 gives us a really remarkable insight again into the character of Moses and his relationship with God. And I'm sure we notice this in verse 11, those beautiful words, "The Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend." And we know, don't we, that beside Abraham, Moses is the only one in the Bible described in this way, as the friend of God. And I was thinking about what constitutes friendship. What are the classic characteristics of friends? And I think we'd probably say the first one is communication, isn't it? Friends enjoy catching up with each other and chatting. So if we want to be the friend of God, we have to ask ourselves, don't we, young people, how often do we talk with him? How often do we communicate with our friend, our God, in prayer? And also, how often do we let him talk to us by reading his Bible? The other thing about friends is that they're constant, aren't they? They're not there just when you need them. They're there for you in the good times and the bad. Their love, their affection for you, the bond that they share with you is constant. What about our friendship with God? I often reflect on myself and my friendship, as it were, with God, and I feel that I'm only really there for him when I really need him. My prayer life can often be judged based on my need. And that's not ideal with friendship, is it? You imagine if your friend only gave you a bell if they need you or need something from you. And then the third thing that came to my mind is the concept of loyalty. Friends believe in each other and they trust in each other. There's a deep sense of trust that your friend, your mate's got your back. And that's true as well of our relationship with God. We read in James 2 verse 23, Abraham believed God and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. He believed God, he trusted in God. He believed all the promises that God had given, and he took God at his word. So here we have Moses, the friend of God. Are we the friend of God? We can become the friend of God if we communicate with him, if we're loyal and constant, and if we have that same sense of trust. I think it also does us well to reflect a little bit on God as a friend. Really, even our best friends in life can sometimes let us down. But God, as a friend, young people, has promised us that he will never leave us or forsake us. Never. What greater friend could we hope for? And if you're taking notes, that's a magnificent reference from Hebrews. A friend who will never leave us or forsake us. But have a look also at something that is really quite fascinating in verse 12, because we find here something that until this point we haven't really read this specifically. We might expect it of Moses, but we haven't read it specifically. In verse 12 we learn something that God has previously said to Moses. It says, this is Moses, "You have said to me, I know you by name, and you, Moses, have found grace in my sight." This is what God has said to him. I know you by name. You've found grace in my sight. So Moses says, Now, therefore, I pray you, if I have found grace in your sight, please show me your way, that I may know you, that I may find grace in your sight. Now, this word name is great because it's actually really in the Hebrew, the word is really reputation. I know your reputation, your name, your standing. And again, as young people, I think it does us really good to reflect on this concept of our reputation. Because in life, often our entire life is summarised in a very, very pithy little statement. We might say, I know Cam Wigsell, he's a such and such. He's a great guy, he's very humble, he's very gregarious, friendly and outgoing. Something like that. It's probably pretty accurate. But it's pretty short, right? I mean, Cam, you've probably lived, 20-odd years or something? That's what we do. We summarise 20-odd years of someone's life into a sentence or two. We don't introduce Cam by going into a thesis on his 20 years of his life. We summarise it neatly in a pithy statement. It does us well to reflect on how our reputation would be summarised. And actually what's more important is how our reputation is summarised not in the opinion of our peers, but in the opinion of the one who sees, hears and knows all. Think of that. God said to Moses, I know your reputation. I know you. I know everything about you, and I love it. You're my friend. I speak to you face to face as one does a friend. That's really powerful. And I guess you've probably heard this before. It's always good to remember with our reputations, isn't it? It takes a lifetime to build them, but sometimes a few seconds of madness to destroy them. Let's just be careful. That's probably more a life lesson rather than a spiritual one, but I think it's a good one nonetheless. But also look at the prayer of Moses. This is amazing. God's given him, as it were, this big rap. I know you. I know your reputation. You've found grace in my sight. You're my friend. Moses says, if that is true, I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm not going to be complacent at all. In fact, he doubles down. He says there, Lord, I pray you, show me your way that I may know you. Show me your way that I may know you. The word way is really road or path. He's saying, God, please direct my steps, direct my path, direct my way. It's a beautiful prayer, isn't it? So that we can then, the beauty of that prayer, young people, is that if you pray that prayer in faith, believing, you then step forward in assurance that God is directing your paths. That's really powerful. It's reassuring. And that's how David lived his life. It was copious times in the Psalms. God, you're directing my paths. You're directing my steps. Please keep doing that. It gave him assurance and confidence to move forward. And often in life, young people, that's a really powerful thing. It's important that as young people we feel we can move forward. So let's move forward with God. But what also did he pray? He said, not just, direct my path or show me your way. He said, that I may know you. How awesome is that? God, I want to know you. Moses always was interested in that. I want to know your character. I want to see you. I actually want to meet you. You, God, not just your angel, but actually you. He was so desperate to know God. When I was growing up, there was a song. It was actually called the band was called Youth Group, and the song was Forever Young. You might have heard that, Forever Young, this song. It's quite a nice song, actually. And it was all about, I want to be forever young. I want to live forever. Well, living forever is knowing God. That's what Jesus said in John 17, verse 3. This is life eternal, that we may know God and he who is sent. It's life eternal. We want to live forever? Yeah? We really do, don't we? Well, then let's pray the prayer of Moses. Show me your way. Help me to come to know you. But also look at the intimacy of Moses' relationship with God. It's so amazing. So amazing. And bear in mind that this is with the angel. The angel was so real to Moses. They walked together. And I've said this a couple of times. If ever there was any doubt that the angel would be there by Moses' side, it was his worst fear. Have a look at the context in verse 3. Because the angels just said to Moses in verse 3 something that he would never have wanted to hear. I will not go up in the midst of you. What's therefore Moses' plea? Look across at verse 15 and 16. If your presence go not with me, carry us not up. If you're not going to be with me, don't carry us up. Don't take us there. I cannot bear to think of being without you. Now, this word presence is actually the very same Hebrew word, face, when we read that God spoke to Moses face to face. Presence is the word face. I love that. You might think for those who are parents of, sometime when you've got a little child, you get their face right up next to yours. And, you cuddle them, you cuddle their face to you, or that might be true of some boyfriends and girlfriends, husbands and wives who have kept the love alive. It's a really lovely thing to feel someone's face, their embrace right there. That's how Moses felt about God. I want to feel your face besides me. I want to feel the warmth of your face on me, with you at my side, shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm with you, I will go. But if you're not there, don't take us up. I can't do it without you. So young people, I quoted that passage in Hebrews about, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Let's make that real with God. Let's not be fair weather friends. We want God always for us. Like, believe me, young people, things will happen in your life when you are desperate for God to save you, to be there for you. Let's not make that our first or second or third prayer. Let's make that our many thousands later, because we've always been there for God. We have not forsaken him. He's promised he'll never leave us nor forsake him. Let's not leave and forsake him. Let's always be there for God, and let's not make it only when we need him that we appeal desperately to him in prayer. Look across now to Numbers 11, and we'll start in verse 4. This is a pretty confronting account of Moses. And it gives us again an insight into both his strengths and his weaknesses. He was only human, and he had challenges. Verse 4 of Numbers 11 says there that the mixed multitude that was among them began to lust, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna. And then we read in verse 10, then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And verse 11, Moses said unto the Lord, this is through the angel, why have you afflicted your servant? Why have you afflicted me? And why have I not found favor in your sight? Should say to me, that you lay the burden of all this people upon me. Have I conceived all this people? Have I given birth to them, that you should say to me, carry them in your arms as a nursing father bears an infant child? Where, skipping down to verse 13, where shall I find flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone because it's too heavy for me. So as I said, it's here in the exasperation of Moses that we get another insight into his character. He feels like a parent, like he's given birth to these children, the children of Israel, that he's having like a young father to have to carry them like an infant child, like a breastfeeding mother. Such was the dependence upon him. And he says, I can't do it anymore. Verse 14, have a look at this. I can't cope. I can't bear it anymore. It's too much for me. And we find then that verse 11, he puts the blame at the feet of the Lord. He says, it's your fault. Why have you afflicted your servant? Why have you done this to me? It's a low point for Moses. But was it all God's fault? No. Hadn't Jethro, his father-in-law, already told him to appoint over officers over hundreds, over 50s and over 10? Where were they? Why was he feeling like this, that it's all about him, that he alone is carrying the burden of all the people? You see, what can happen under stress? The psychologists tell us that under stress, we revert to more childlike behaviours, things that have previously worked well for us, but actually aren't sustainable in the longer term. Moses hadn't empowered, trusted, and delegated to these people. He had for a moment heeded the advice of Jethro, but over time, it was back to him. Perhaps because he felt, that he could do it better. Perhaps it was that natural instinct, that fatherly instinct, that desire to control outcomes by his own actions. But at the end of the day, it wasn't good. It wasn't good for the people. They say that many a true word is spoken in jest and anger. And I think here what Moses is verbalizing, that, you, God, have put all the people on me, is actually what he had done. He had taken the burden of all the people on him. It was he that hadn't delegated and trusted others. It was he who couldn't resist the urge to take the people up in his arms and carry them like infant children. But you see, the problem with that is it bred an impotence into the people, a dependence upon Moses. And it wasn't good. In fact, Jethro's advice was very, very accurate. You can see them almost as that breastfeeding child. Verse 13, almost like little baby birds looking up to mother bird Moses. Wherefore will we eat? What will you give us to eat? Complete and utter dependence upon Moses, an unhealthy expectation, to the point where verse 14, I can't cope anymore. He says to God, it is too much. The weight of expectation of all these people, which we'll see numbered in the hundreds of thousands, on one, it weighed so heavily on him, mentally, emotionally, physically, to the point where he is at complete exasperation. And he goes to God in prayer in the lowest depression that I believe he probably faced in his whole life. Moses was a great man, an extraordinary man, the servant of God, the friend of God. But he wasn't immune to the sufferings that many experience today. Verse 15 makes it very, very clear that Moses had got himself into an extraordinary state of depression and despair. Verse 15, if you, God, deal this way with me, then kill me. This is Moses. Kill me. I pray you out of hand, if I have found favour in your sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. He knew this would be the death of him. He didn't want to see his own demise. If I found grace in your sight, kill me. Young people, we may in our life, and many of you here today may be facing exactly that. To be depressed does not mean you're not faithful, that you don't love God, that you're not brave, you're not courageous. For many of us, it's a consequence of sin. It's a sickness. And despite our extraordinary faith, we're not immune. It's part of what it means to be human. The beautiful thing that Moses did, though, is even in that moment, who was he talking to? He's talking to God. If I found grace in your sight, don't let me see my own wretchedness. So, young people, yeah, it's awesome. There's organisations like Beyond Blue and Are You OK Day and these things. But also don't forget God. Yes, if you're suffering with that depression, let's make sure you and our friends and our families that we get the help we need, the professional help. But always bring God into the picture as well. And look at God's solution. This is quite extraordinary. Verse 16, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon you, and I'll put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you bear it not yourself alone. Now, young people, there's two very powerful learnings from this. The first is extraordinary. In God's opinion, it took the work of 70 able brothers to do the work that one was previously doing. Such is the extraordinary strength and courage and faith of Moses. Yes, although misplaced, one could never question his intent. 70. But then the other big lesson for all of us here today is, guess what? There was 70. There was 70. What was Moses doing? Why didn't he see them? Why didn't he empower and trust them? Sure, the challenge in the truth, it's like when you teach your kids tennis, for example. They're never going to be as good as you, but if you don't start, empower, trust, and encourage, they'll never get there. Moses had a little bit, as we said in one of our studies, of that Elijah mentality. Everyone's bowed the knee to Baal. Of everyone, I'm the last one left. So take my life. And God said to him, hang on a minute. Look around. Look around you, Elijah. Look at the thousands, like the 70, that have not bowed the knee to Baal. So again, young people, two lessons from that. One is, let's always have an inclusive approach to leadership. Let's not overemphasize performance over passion. Let's not make the platform, for example, a stage, and let's never make the ecclesia an audience. It's never about us. Let's encourage the young, the newly baptized, so that we share the burden. And let's not ever be so pious that we fail to see the 70 elders who actually in our heart we feel are able. Moses knew these elders, and it's actually God that points them out and says, go, bring them to the tabernacle that they may work with you that you bear this burden not alone. And then there's another lesson, young people. Let's not stand by when we see this happening. You know, a lot of it is on us. At times, even in our community, and it's true in just about every community, we've had a little bit of hero worship in our own community. It's not always the fault of that brother or sister. It's often us. We put them on a pedestal that ought never to be for anyone. Let's be done with that. It ought never to be about us. So let's not do that to others. Let's not allow that to happen. But also, let's not perhaps do what maybe some of these elders were doing. I mean, what were the 70 doing? Watching Moses to the point of utter physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental exhaustion. When we see in our ecclesias, when we see in our young people's circle, let's get our backs up off the wall and help and lean in and support. The Bible talks about being yoke fellows or fellow burden bearers. There was hundreds of thousands. You know, when we think about the wilderness wanderings, we ought not to think of a little tribe just wandering around. We'll see that in a moment. Moses talks about hundreds of thousands. And there was one thinking he was shouldering the lot. So let's get in and support and ask our brother or sister, are you okay? What can I do to help? And as a very wise sister said to me earlier in the week, I won't embarrass her by naming her, she said, you know, the moment you ask someone to help you, by definition, they're a little bit different from you. They're not the same, but we've got to trust, empower, and be prepared to work together so that we might be co-labourers together with God. Very good advice. There's also something very interesting, and this is the reference to the 600 in the exchange between Moses and God in verse 21 to 22, because it tells us a little bit more about Moses, because God promises to feed the people meat for a month, to which Moses responds, verse 21, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen. Right? See that? 600,000 footmen. That's not all the men, that's the footmen. 600,000 of them. Add in all the women, the children. This was a huge gathering. And you have said, I will give them flesh that they may eat a whole month. So he says to the angels, what? So shall all the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice? Or shall all the fishes of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? He says to the angel, how is this going to happen? You know, young people, one of the things we've got to face in life when we believe in God and Jesus is that the people around us who don't will always strain God and Jesus and the Bible through the prism, the sieve of the visible. Right? You know the test in science. Well, how does it go? Everything has to be observable, repeatable, measurable, yeah? Otherwise, it doesn't meet the test. Yeah? Observable, repeatable, measurable. And so, of course, on that basis, when it comes to the miracles of the past that the Bible claims and the miracles prophesied in it, the world would say, nah, don't believe it. I mean, yeah, right. So explain to me how Jesus walked on water. Yeah? Let's try and set up the hypothesis. One can walk on water is the hypothesis. Let's conduct the experiment. No, they sunk. Therefore, no God. Elisha's axe that floated on the water. No, can't be observable, repeatable, measurable. No. In that sense, though, if you're going to believe in God and make him big, it's not about putting God through that kind of test. God makes the rules. He makes the laws. He's not bound by them. Yeah? Sure, if you want to make everything about being observable, repeatable, and measurable, then exclude God. But if we, young people, if we, through the eye of faith, which sees and acknowledges the invisible, if we are going to believe in a God on that basis, make him big, really big. Don't compromise God, because he doesn't ask for that. God just said, I spoke and it was done. Right? Now look, let's be open about this. It may be that when we get to the judgment seat and we're in the kingdom and we chat to an angel and we say, look, please explain to me exactly how the creation occurred. There might be more things to it than what we read in Genesis 1. There may be, there may not be. Because in many verses in the Bible, God simply says, he spoke and it was done. And for mine, young people, this is just for me, I would far rather stand at the feet of Jesus and he says, you know what, David, you were a little bit naive. You were a little bit simple. You just took me at my word. You just read Genesis 1 and believed it. You read those passages in Isaiah which said that I spoke and it was done. Let me now tell you, it was a little bit more complicated than that. But I'm honoured that you believed that if it was that, it could be. Far rather be sitting in that position than God saying, oh, so you thought you could explain me? You thought you had some wisdom beyond what was in my word? You tried to make me small? You tried to rationalize me? You tried to find a compromise that was a nice little hypothesis that made you feel good? Let me tell you that actually, yeah, I just spoke and it was done because my name's God and you're not, and that's how it is. My point, young people, and you can disagree with me, that's totally fine. But for me, if you're going to be believing God, make him massive, make him miraculous, make everything possible and leave it there. That's just my opinion. Let's not put God... You know, the angel said to Sarah, is anything too hard for God? The Lord Jesus Christ said, with God, all things are possible. All things. Let's believe that. It's a bit like the fence sitting, really. It's uncomfortable when we try to compromise. I don't think God's all that thrilled about that. And I don't think we go far enough for the scientists to be happy. So forget the fence. In my view, get off the fence and go all in with God. Chapter 12. This is a pretty heartbreaking moment because it's Moses' siblings. Verse 1, and Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses. Look at this. Because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. Have you noticed that before? We often think with Moses and Aaron, it's all about, oh, you take too much on yourself. No. It was a racial issue. Because of the Egyptian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Egyptian woman. Twice it emphasises that point for a powerful reason. This was the reason why they spoke against Moses, because he had married a black woman. You probably don't think about that too often when you think of Moses' wife. Did you have a black woman in mind? Yeah. He married this Ethiopian woman, an extraordinary woman, obviously. That was their issue, though. But then they used that as a pretext for their challenge, which is dressed up in a different nature. They don't go the racial card, they go a different card. Verse 2. Has the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Has he not spoken by us? So they use this as a weapon to inflict hurt on Moses on account of their racial prejudice. Look at the concluding piece of verse 2. And the Lord heard it. And the Lord heard it. And again, that's just a neat little lesson, but we should pause for that lesson. I would underline that. You know, young people, what that's telling us is every word of envy, jealousy, of any form of racial prejudice, God hears it. Yeah? There's no place for it. Absolutely no place for it. Even if we might try and dress it up as Miriam and Aaron did here, he hears what we say. How does that make us feel? It's pretty sobering, isn't it? I find that one of the most sobering pithy little sentences in the Bible that just, we know it's so simple but profound. God hears. He hears what we say. So let's be cautious and wise. We read then verse 6, if there be a prophet, this is what God says. He brings the three together, Moses, Aaron and Miriam, and he says some remarkable words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision and will speak unto him in a dream. But my servant Moses is different. He's not like that. He is faithful in all my house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even plainly, and not in dark speeches, not in parables or analogies or allegories, but plainly. And the form of the Lord shall he behold. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So again, here's God drawing a distinction between Moses and all the other prophets. He says, with all the other prophets, I speak to them in parables, in visions, but with Moses, I chat to him face to face, mouth to mouth, as a man would a friend. He's unique. You ought to have had more respect before you spoke against my servant Moses. And look at that. Twice God says, he is my servant. And then his assessment of his service. So if Moses was the servant of God as we have as the theme, what's his assessment of the service of Moses? It's magnificent. He has been faithful in all my house. You know, there's something beautiful about God. When he summarizes stuff, he leaves out a lot of the bad stuff. David was an adulterer and a murderer. No. The summary of David's life, man after my own heart, because his heart beat with God, even though he made mistakes. Moses, yeah, he made mistakes. We've seen them. But in God's assessment through the eye of grace, faithful in all my house. God imputes the best, the essence of us. We might make mistakes. Let's not over-obsess with the mistakes, the sin. We can be forgiven. Move forward, focus on the positive, right? The essence of who you are, and that is what our God, by grace, sees. Very powerful. Jesus said, are we a faithful and wise servant whom his Lord has made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season, to give them meat, food, feed them? That's what Moses did from the moment he led them out into the wilderness, despite their complaining, their chiding, their whinging. He constantly gave. You know what are the words that you young people, above any words, do you dream of that Jesus would say to you? I'm guessing they're probably fairly similar to mine. Well done, good and faithful servant. And picking up on the different gospel renderings, you have been faithful in just a few little things. Enter into the kingdom of God. As we've said, the service in the Lord is not a marathon. It's not about winning. Sorry, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not even about winning. It's just about keeping going. In fact, it's possibly not even about keeping going. It's often about standing and holding on. Moses was faithful in all his house. Yeah, he made mistakes, but the essence of him was solid. And that's what God's opinion of him that endures. Now, what was his response then to the situation with Miriam. Verse 10, the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. You know, how does Moses react in the face of the bigotry of Miriam, the challenge to him, the confrontation? God has now vindicated him. There she is, leprous. Yeah? What do? Oh, she needs some time out of the ecclesia for several months that she might appreciate the enormity of her sin. And when finally we are comfortable that she might, appropriately with the tail between her legs, come back into the ecclesia, that's how it will be for Miriam. You know, she's done a grave thing here, yeah? And God's clearly pronounced judgment. Is that Moses? Like, fight fire with fire? You got what you deserve, Miriam. Verse 13, immediately Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, heal her now, O God, I beseech you. How meek is this man? She's absolutely just attacked him, attacked his wife. God's vindicated him. Immediately, heal her now, God. As I said in one of our earlier studies, when a brother or sister offends or when a brother or sister sins, we acknowledge the sin for what it is, but we immediately do what Moses did. There's the precedent, meekness. Acknowledge it, but then please heal now, forgive. Always the modus operandi of Moses. Let's have a look at Numbers 14. We'll skip across and start in verse 2. You know, almost when you've worked through the life of Moses, you just have huge sympathy for this poor man constantly dealing with these murmuring, whinging, chiding people. Verse 2, all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them again, would God that we died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness already? Why has the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, look at this, let's reject this guy, let's make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. We then read that they threatened to stone Caleb and Joshua. And then verse 11, the Lord intervened and said unto Moses, how long will this people provoke me? And how long will it be before they believe me? This is the angel chatting to Moses. For all the signs which I have showed among them, I will smite them with the plague, I'll disinherit them, and I will make of you a great nation and mightier than they. Like, I reckon by about now, we would be, on the first time, no, I love my people. I want to atone for them, I'll intercede for them. Second time, yep, I'm still up for it. Third time, fourth, fifth. By around now, you'd be, yep, bring it on. Yeah, let's kick off again. I'm done. I'm over these people. Not Moses, the meekest of men. His deep and abiding passion and love for his people. Never once. This is the second time God, through the angel, has said, I'm prepared to start again with you. You, the father of a new nation, a new race, all with you as the founding father. What does he say? Verse 15. He quotes God back to him, as we'll see. But he says, if you shall kill all this people as one man, then the nations which have heard the fame of you will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he sware unto them, therefore he has slain them in the wilderness. And now I beg you, let the power of my Lord be great, according as what you've said. You've said the Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. So he says, that's what you said. So pardon, forgive, I beg you, the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of your mercy, and as you have forgiven this people from Egypt to now. God, don't give up on them. Be great. You've forgiven them right up until now. Keep going. Be true to what you said. You said you were long-suffering, merciful, forgiving, gracious, kind. Let's see it. Let's be great, that your name not be taken in vain. Just think about Moses, though. Just a little point so that we can stand in awe again of this great man. They murmured against him. What did he do? He prayed that they would be pardoned. They reject him and say, we want a new captain. He prays for them that God would be merciful to them. On so many times, they tried to bring Moses down to his knees, to cut him down. The tall poppy syndrome. They wanted to bring him to his knees. And yet every time Moses gets down on his knees and prays for them. You know, in business and school and uni, we're often told to be proactive, not reactive. That's a Bible concept too, because so often in life we allow our behaviour to be dictated by somebody else. How they'll treat us is often, naturally, what we give back. You know, road rage. Someone's cuts you off, you know, bit of rage, that kind of thing. You react to what other people do. Moses didn't do that. He was kind and gracious and forgiving and loving to people when they were anything but. Now, why is that important, young people? And it alludes to something we covered in one of our earlier studies. Why is that important? Because that is God. How do we know that? We know that because Jesus told us that God makes his rain to fall on the just and the unjust. Yeah? He shows love to all. Jesus said, love your enemies. Yeah, they're bad. Your natural instinct is that they're your enemy. Love them. Bless them who curse you. Do good to them who hate you. Pray for them who despitefully use you and persecute you. Why? Why? That you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. He makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and his rain to fall on the just and the unjust. Young people, the truth, our walk in what we would refer to as the truth, yeah, being a disciple of Jesus is about being like Moses and like God and like Jesus, showing love to those who are being unlovable, kind to those who are harsh. It's not about just fighting fire with fire. It's not about reacting to how others react. It's rising above it and being like Moses. All right, our last section that we'll consider today, maybe you can have a look across in Deuteronomy 1, because Moses reminisces about this incident. Deuteronomy 1 and verse 29. We read there, I said unto you, in relation to this time when they were about to go in and possess the land, he said to them, I said to you, dread not, don't be afraid of them. Remember, there was all the giants. Caleb and Joshua were brave. The other spies only saw the giants. And Moses tells us in reminiscing in Deuteronomy 1 verse 29, I said to you, dread not, neither be afraid of them. The Lord your God, which goes before you, he will fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, and in the wilderness where you have seen how that the Lord your God bare you, as a man does bear his son, in all the way that you went until you came into this place. And again, this is probably one of the enduring takeaways that I've had from the life of Moses. He always saw the invisible. He endured, it says in Hebrews 11, as seeing the unseen. He didn't see giants. He didn't see the Anakins. He saw God leading them into the promised land. What do we see, young people? Are we like the children of Israel here? Moses says, you're very quick to forget all the extraordinary things that God did in Egypt, all the extraordinary things he's already done in the wilderness wanderings. And now, under a little bit of pressure, when you see these giants, all of a sudden, bang, it's self-preservation. Don't you remember how great and powerful he is? Remember the Red Sea. We're just the same, aren't we? Miracles happen in our lives, young people, but we're really quick to forget them. And we turn more to fear and dread and our own ingenuity and our own desire for self-preservation. What does Moses say? Dread not, neither be afraid of them. The Lord God will fight for you. And what could he see? The Lord your God which goes before you, the Lord your God which bare you as a man does his son. In the Hebrew, it's a really beautiful expression. Moses could see them as if a father, you might think of a father and a son in battle, and maybe the son is wounded and shot. And the dad, who's a fellow soldier, just can't leave him behind. And he reaches down, he throws his son over his shoulder, and he carries him to safety. That's the imagery here. That's what Moses could see. That's the God he could see. We will not be alone. We will get through this. Don't just see the giants. In this world around us, there are many giants. There are many greats of industry, of politics, of sport, many giants. And we can be intimidated. We can think, who are we? What do we see? Do we see that? Or do we see our God who makes the clouds his chariots, who walks upon the wings of the wind? No one else can see it. People probably think we're strange because we talk about stuff you can't see that's not observable, repeatable, measurable, but that's a little thing, young people, that's a really big thing, and it's called faith. And we know from the Bible that we will never earn salvation. Paul is at great pains in Romans to teach us that it is only by grace, and he says very powerfully that it's grace which works by faith. We saw in one of our earlier studies, who are they who will overcome but those who have faith? Let's not be a Balaam. You remember Balaam? He had to have his eyes opened to see the angels that were all there. Can you see them? Can I see them? Well, literally we can't. But let's be like Moses, not just seeing the giants, but seeing the angels, seeing the unseen. In verse 32 of Deuteronomy 1, Moses says, "You did not believe the Lord your God, but there he was. He went before you to search you out a place to pitch your tents in fire by night, to show you the way that you should go, and in a cloud by day." The challenge for the children of Israel is that that familiarity had perhaps bred contempt. The cloud became a cloud, the pillar by fire, a pillar by fire, and they forgot, Moses says, that was God telling them, "I am always with you." Let's, for us, see the clouds by day and the pillars of fire by night, that God is with us, that the angels are encamped around us. And let's be like David, who said in the Psalms, "Even through the valley of the shadow of death, I will go, I will not fear." Why? Because your rod and your staff are with me. Let's always take God with us wherever we go.